My name is Ruby, and if you'd told me a year ago that my family would be torn apart by a single piece of paper, I would have said you were being dramatic. But sometimes the things you think are solid, like love, loyalty, and family, turn out to be as fragile as the paper they're written on. I learned that the hard way, the day my dad cut me out of his will. Growing up, I always thought my family was normal. We had our quirks, sure, but who didn't? My dad, Thomas, was a man of few words and strong opinions. He ran our house with a quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to shout to be heard. My mom, Linda, was softer, always trying to keep the peace, always smoothing over the rough edges. I was the youngest of three, with an older brother, Mark, and a sister, Emily. Mark was the golden child, athletic, charming, and always the center of attention. Emily was the peacemaker, the one who could talk anyone down from a ledge. And then there was me, Ruby, the dreamer, the one who never quite fit the mold. My relationship with my dad was complicated. He loved us, I know he did, but he showed it in ways that were hard to read. He'd slip a 20 into my backpack before a school trip or fix my car without saying a word, but he never said, "I love you," not out loud. I spent years trying to earn his approval, thinking that if I just worked hard enough, if I just made him proud, he'd finally see me. My grandpa, on the other hand, was my safe place. Grandpa Joe was everything my dad wasn't: warm, funny, and endlessly patient. He'd tell me stories about his childhood, teach me how to play chess, and listen to my dreams without judgment. He was the one who told me I could be anything I wanted, the one who believed in me when no one else did. After college, I moved back home to save money while I started my first job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. I worked long hours trying to prove myself, trying to show my dad that I was worth something. But no matter what I did, it never seemed to be enough. Mark got a promotion and Dad threw a party. Emily got engaged and Dad gave her his mother's ring. I got a new job and Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. Things started to change when Grandpa Joe got sick. He was diagnosed with cancer, and suddenly our family was thrown into chaos. My dad took charge, organizing doctor's appointments and managing Grandpa's finances. Mark and Emily visited when they could, but I was the one who stayed. I drove Grandpa to chemo, sat with him during treatments, and listened to his stories when he couldn't sleep. We grew even closer during those months, and I cherished every moment. One night, as I was helping Grandpa into bed, he squeezed my hand. "Grandpa, promise me something," he said, his voice weak but steady. "Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel small. You're stronger than you think." I promised, not knowing how much I'd need those words. When Grandpa passed away, our family fell apart. My dad was distant, my mom was lost in her grief, and Mark and Emily drifted away, caught up in their own lives. I felt like I was floating, untethered, trying to find my place in a family that no longer felt like home. A few months later, my dad called a family meeting. We gathered in the living room, the air thick with tension. My dad cleared his throat, holding a stack of papers. He said, "I've updated my will. Mark and Emily will inherit the house and the business. Ruby, you're not included." The words hit me like a punch. I stared at him, waiting for him to say it was a joke, that he was just trying to get a rise out of me. But his face was stone. "Why?" I managed to whisper. He didn't look at me. "You've always been different, Ruby. You don't belong in the family business. I'm doing what's best for everyone." I felt the room spin. My mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Mark and Emily looked uncomfortable, but neither of them spoke up. I stood up, my legs shaking. "I can't believe you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "After everything I've done, after everything Grandpa did for me, you just cut me out?" My dad didn't answer. I left the room, slamming the door behind me. I drove for hours, tears streaming down my face, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I thought about Grandpa, about his stories, about the promise I'd made. I wondered if I'd really belonged in this family, or if I'd just been filling space until Mark and Emily needed more room. That night, I stayed at a friend's house, unable to face my family. I replayed the conversation over and over, searching for something I could have done differently. But the truth was, my dad had made up his mind long ago. I was never going to be enough for him. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my mom. "Come home, Ruby. We need to talk." I almost ignored it, but something in her words made me go back. When I walked in, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, her eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry, Ruby. Your dad, he's stubborn, but you're my daughter, and I love you." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to let go of the hurt, to forgive and move on, but I knew it would take time. I spent the next few days avoiding my dad, barely speaking to Mark and Emily. I felt like a ghost in my own home. But then, everything changed. I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. As I opened it, my heart pounded. I had no idea that Grandpa's secret was about to change everything. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter in my hands. Grandpa's handwriting was instantly familiar, each loop and curve a reminder of chess games and bedtime stories. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the paper, afraid of what I might find, but desperate for any connection to the man who had always believed in me. The letter was short, but every word felt like a lifeline. "Dear Ruby," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you're probably feeling lost. I want you to know that I saw you, truly saw you, every day. I know how hard you tried, how much you gave, and how often you felt invisible. I'm sorry your dad can't see it, but I do. I always have." Tears blurred my vision as I read on. "There's something I never told anyone, not even your father. Years ago, I bought a small cabin upstate. It's not much, but it's yours. The deed is in the safe deposit box at First National Bank, under your name. The key is hidden in the chess set I gave you for your 16th birthday. I hope you find peace there. And I hope you remember that you are loved, no matter what anyone else says. Love, Grandpa." I sat in stunned silence, the letter pressed to my chest. A cabin? My name on the deed? It felt impossible, like something out of one of Grandpa's stories. But as the shock faded, a new feeling took its place. Hope. For the first time since my dad cut me out of the will, I felt like maybe I had a future that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. I ran upstairs to my room, heart pounding, and pulled the old wooden chess set from the top shelf of my closet. I opened the box and carefully lifted each piece until I found it, a tiny brass key taped to the bottom of the queen. I laughed through my tears, amazed at Grandpa's cleverness, and clutched the key in my fist like a secret treasure. The next morning, I drove to the bank, the letter and key tucked safely in my purse. The woman at the counter looked skeptical when I explained, but after checking my ID and making a few calls, she led me to a private room. Inside the safe deposit box was a manila envelope with my name on it. My hands shook as I opened it and pulled out the deed, along with a note from Grandpa. "Go see it for yourself, Ruby. It's time to start your own story." I left the bank in a daze, the deed clutched in my hands. I wanted to call someone to share the news, but I didn't know who would understand. My mom would be happy for me, but I wasn't ready to talk to her yet. Mark and Emily would probably be surprised, maybe even jealous. And my dad? I didn't even want to think about how he'd react. Instead, I packed a bag, grabbed my car keys, and set out for the cabin. The drive took a few hours, winding through forests and small towns, the scenery growing wilder with each mile. I felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. What if the cabin was a wreck? What if it wasn't real? But when I finally turned down a gravel road and saw the little house nestled among the trees, all my doubts melted away. The cabin was small but sturdy, with a wraparound porch and a stone chimney. Wildflowers grew in the yard, and the air smelled like pine and earth. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, my breath catching in my throat. The place was filled with Grandpa's touches: old books on the shelves, a patchwork quilt on the bed, a faded photograph of the two of us on the mantel. It felt like coming home to a part of myself I'd forgotten. I spent the weekend cleaning, exploring, and letting myself dream. I imagined painting the walls, planting a garden, and inviting friends to visit. For the first time in months, I felt free, free from my dad's expectations, free from the weight of being the different one, free to be Ruby, just as I was. When I returned home, I felt different, stronger. I knew I couldn't hide the cabin forever, but I also knew I didn't owe anyone an explanation. It was mine, a gift from the one person who had always believed in me. That night, I sat on my bed, Grandpa's letter in my hands, and realized that sometimes the family you need isn't the one you're born into. It's the one that believes in you, even when no one else does. The days that followed felt like I was living in two worlds. At home, everything was tense and awkward. My dad barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was short and clipped, as if he was talking to a stranger. Mark and Emily tried to act normal, but I could sense their curiosity. I caught them whispering more than once, glancing at me when they thought I wasn't looking. My mom hovered, trying to keep the peace, but even she seemed worn down by the strain. But when I thought about the cabin, I felt a spark of hope. I started making plans in secret, researching how to fix up an old house, looking up gardening tips, and sketching out ideas for the rooms. I'd never had something that was truly mine before, and the thought of creating a space just for myself was both thrilling and terrifying. One Saturday, I decided to drive up to the cabin again. I told my family I was spending the weekend with a friend, not ready to share my secret yet. The drive felt different this time, less like an escape, more like a homecoming. When I arrived, I opened all the windows, letting in the fresh mountain air, and spent hours cleaning, rearranging furniture, and making lists of what I'd need to make the place my own. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun set behind the trees. I thought about Grandpa, about the way he'd always encouraged me to dream big, to trust myself. I missed him fiercely, but I felt closer to him here than I ever had at home. I promised myself I'd honor his memory by building a life I could be proud of. The next morning, I found a small box tucked away in a kitchen cabinet. Inside was a stack of letters, all addressed to me in Grandpa's handwriting. My heart pounded as I opened the first one. "Dear Ruby," it began, "if you're reading this, you've found the cabin. I hope it feels like a safe place for you. I wanted you to have somewhere you could always come back to, no matter what. Remember, you are never alone." Each letter was filled with advice, encouragement, and stories from Grandpa's own life. He wrote about his mistakes, his regrets, and the lessons he'd learned along the way. He told me to be brave, to take risks, and to never let anyone else define my worth. By the time I finished reading, I was crying, but they were happy tears. I felt seen, understood, and loved in a way I never had before. Back at home, things with my dad only got worse. He seemed angry all the time, snapping at everyone, especially me. One night after dinner, he cornered me in the hallway. "Where have you been going every weekend?" he demanded. "You're hiding something." I met his gaze, refusing to back down. "I'm not hiding. I'm just living my life, Dad. Isn't that what you wanted?" He scowled, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. "You're not part of this family's future, Ruby. You made that clear." I shook my head. "No, Dad, you made that clear when you cut me out of the will. But I'm done trying to earn your approval. I have my own life now." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. I felt a strange sense of relief, as if a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. A few days later, Mark and Emily cornered me in the kitchen. "What's going on, Ruby?" Emily asked gently. "You seem different." I hesitated, then decided to tell them the truth. I showed them Grandpa's letter, the deed to the cabin, and the stack of letters I'd found. They listened in stunned silence, their eyes wide with surprise. "Grandpa left you a cabin?" Mark said, incredulous. "Why didn't he tell anyone?" I shrugged. "I think he wanted me to have something that was just mine, something no one could take away." Emily hugged me, tears in her eyes. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve this." Mark nodded, looking thoughtful. I guess Grandpa knew what he was doing. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my siblings were on my side. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the cabin, making plans to visit together, and sharing stories about Grandpa. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to rebuild our relationships on our own terms. As the weeks passed, I spent more and more time at the cabin. I painted the walls, planted a garden, and filled the rooms with things that made me happy. I invited friends to visit, hosted dinners on the porch, and even started writing in a journal, something Grandpa had always encouraged me to do. Slowly, I started to heal. I realized that my worth wasn't tied to my dad's approval or to my place in the family. I was enough, just as I was, and for the first time, I was excited about the future. The summer I spent at the cabin changed me in ways I never expected. I learned how to fix a leaky roof, how to grow tomatoes from seed, and how to build a fire that would last all night. I learned how to be alone without feeling lonely, how to listen to the quiet, and how to trust my own instincts. Every time I opened Grandpa's letters, I felt his presence guiding me, reminding me that I was stronger than I thought. One weekend, Mark and Emily finally came to visit. We spent the afternoon hiking through the woods, laughing about old times, and sharing stories we'd never told before. That night, we sat around a campfire, roasting marshmallows and watching the stars. For the first time in years, I felt like we were truly siblings. No competition, no jealousy, just love and understanding. Emily squeezed my hand and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Ruby. Grandpa would be too." Back in town, word about the cabin started to spread. My mom called more often, asking about my garden, my projects, my plans. She even came up for a visit, bringing homemade cookies and a photo album from when I was little. We sat on the porch, flipping through the pages, and for the first time, she apologized for not standing up for me when Dad cut me out of the will. "I should have fought harder for you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Ruby." I hugged her, letting the past go, and told her I forgave her. It felt like a weight had lifted from both of us. My dad, though, stayed distant. He never called, never visited, never asked about the cabin. But I stopped waiting for him to change. I realized that some people can't give you what you need, no matter how much you wish they could. And that's okay. I had found my own place, my own peace, and I didn't need his approval anymore. As autumn arrived, I threw a big party at the cabin for my birthday. Friends, neighbors, and even some of Grandpa's old buddies came. The house was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of apple pie. I stood on the porch, looking out at the people who'd become my chosen family, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. I had lost so much, but I had gained even more. That night, as the last guests left and the fire burned low, I sat with my journal and wrote a letter to Grandpa. I told him about the garden, the friends I'd made, the way I'd finally learned to love myself. I thanked him for believing in me, for giving me the chance to start over, for reminding me that I was never alone. If you're listening to my story and you've ever felt left out, overlooked, or unworthy, I hope you know that your story isn't over. Sometimes the family you need is the one you build for yourself. Sometimes the love you're looking for is already inside you, waiting to be discovered. Thank you for listening. If my story touched you, please subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments. Remember, you are enough, and you deserve a place where you belong, no matter what anyone else says.